Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Lodestar's Lending Leaders. Today, we have a return guest, friend of the pod, Roy George, managing partner at MOR Lending, who's a correspondent lender based in Miami, Florida. So, Roy, you were on the podcast in our first season, and glad it wasn't a bad enough experience that you wanted to come back again. I really appreciate it. I know we've worked together for a while, so it's always fun to have you on. I know you're at a different position than you were last time. You were at a large publicly traded home builder, their kind of in-house mortgage department. Now you're at a smaller correspondent lender. So we'd love to kind of hear about the move, kind of what led to it, and kind of go have a discussion based off that.
Sure. So thanks a lot for having me back. And, I was excited to see that when it first came over. I was like, oh, of course, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed being here the first time. I definitely made a big move this past year, and it's been great. MOR Lending has given me the opportunity to really build a culture built on some of my own values, and we focus on teamwork. That's what our foundation is. We've got a great group of people here, and we started out with a small group, but I came on board and helped with the transition. So we were a broker when I first got here. And since then, we've achieved going to correspondent lender. We've expanded the footprint. Now we're approved in California, Montana, Georgia, and our home state of Florida, where we're doing really well. We had an amazing 7 months since I've been here of just adding new people, getting new MLOs to join the team, and just expanding the organization overall, social media, websites, lots of things. But the transition has been it's been tiring. That's the right way to put it. You go from being an employee somewhere, and that's great. But when you're responsible for it all, it's a different world of work.
Yeah. A little bit of everything. I still have times where I'm talking to someone and they see my title, they say, oh, I'm talking to the CEO. And I always say the same thing. I say, you're also talking to the janitor, but it doesn't look as good on a business card.
That's exactly true, Jim. I'm in the same boat, man. I'm the president and managing partner of MOR. And at the same time, I'm doing the paperwork, doing the licensing, anything and everything you could think of. I've even originated a few loans this year.
I was going to mention that actually, because I saw you posted on social media a few months ago. You were going through, I think it was a mortgage broker training or some training course with one of your wholesale partners. So do you feel like you kind of had to unlearn some things or kind of go back to brass tacks? Like, what has that kind of untraining, relearning process been like?
I got a really good opportunity to head out to the UWM facility up in Michigan. And spend some time doing some training on how to get the correspondent lender off the ground. So it wasn't a broker training, it was actually transitioning the broker over to correspondent lending. And that's what that training was for. It was really eye-opening. There were a number of things that, in my mind, I've always thought, I know what that is. I know exactly how that works. And then I started doing it myself and I said, oh man, I did not know that, or I need to learn that. But that's been the biggest part, is really just getting into all the nitty gritty and understanding the transitional steps. So that's been a lot of the work that I've been focused on, man.
So, a lot of big picture stuff with, working on company culture, hiring, business development. But then it sounds like on the other side, you're dealing with the borrowers, you're dealing with the marketing, you're dealing with actual consumers. What is the process now that you're a little bit more closer to the consumer than you were before? How has that felt? What has surprised you about kind of what that experience is like now for someone?
So really, it's about solving for everything. Being in the roles that I've had over the years, and the last 6 or 7 years, I've been sitting in an executive suite. I've had an army behind me to do everything, right? And now I'm doing everything. And so I think the part that you really miss when you go out to start your own, or when you go out to help a small company become something bigger, is really understanding the roll up your sleeves attitude that you have to have. In many interviews over the years, people ask that question, are you willing to roll up your sleeves and get involved? And it's very different when it's yours, because when it's yours,
Mhm.
there is no rolling up the sleeves. It's like your sleeves are rolled up as soon as you
Yeah.
wake up and all the way till you go to sleep. And you're lucky to
Mhm.
get a lot of sleep.
Yeah. Mhm. They always say you sleep like a baby, awake crying every 3 hours.
or I don't wake up crying, but I
Yeah.
do wake up with quite a few ideas to jot down, and
Yeah.
that's just a weird stress I wake up with here and there, but
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
And that's, I mean, always a concern of mine when I'm talking to someone as a potential hire coming from a large company to a smaller company like Lodestar, like having to, shift that attitude. And I don't think it's necessarily easy. Thinking about, I know you're looking at a lot at realtor partners attacking the purchase market right now. How do you think about the home buying experience? I recently polled folks on LinkedIn and said, describe first time home buyers in one word. I got about 14 responses. 2 of them were positive. 2 people said like optimistic, excited, happy. Everyone else said broke, confused, scared. Someone said mortgage-fied, right?
Like
Tired,
mortified.
right? Yeah. So just like, how do you kind of, what word would you use and how do you kind of approach the borrower experience now as you're trying to get a lot of those folks maybe buying their first home?
So I've got to think about the word, but let me tell you the experience. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
the focus has to be on that, exactly the experience,
Mhm.
the whether it's a home purchase, whether it's a
Mhm.
refi, getting them through that experience is the most important part.
Mhm.
And the right word for what do I think about first time home buyers
Mhm.
is coachable. They need to be
Coachable. I
coachable.
like that. Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's helpful because they usually don't know a whole lot about the process, right? It's very, very vague. I was watching the news last night and they were talking about rising home prices and, all of the things going on right now with higher interest rates, limited supply, a lot of issues we even talked about a year ago. And there was someone looking to buy a home in Phoenix, I believe. And he was saying, my wife and I are buying our first home. We thought this was going to be like this wonderful emotional process, but this has turned into a business transaction. Right?
It's
And
true.
yeah,
It's true.
and
A lot of the times that's exactly what it is. It's a
yeah,
business transaction, and they'd like it to be the wonderful experience that they think it is when they're on
yeah,
Zillow or
yeah,
Redfin or whatever they're on and they're
mhm,
looking for a home. They're shopping online and they're excited about that. And that's part of the reason that customer experience is so important, because
yeah,
you want to be able to maintain the excitement for your customer. You
mhm,
know, Jim, last year, we did a fair number of loans considering the small amount of loan officers we have.
mhm,
But I would say that 50% of our customers felt comfortable enough to leave us a 5-star Google rating and
mhm,
wrote something about us, even
yeah,
named our loan officers by name.
mhm,
And that's because we take the time to not only teach them about how to maneuver the customer experience, but
mhm,
how to make sure their people feel comfortable through
yeah,
that entire journey. And for me in this market, that is, that is one of the top priorities
mhm,
for any successful MLO to really
mhm,
make it, and in return for a company like mine to thrive.
mhm. And speaking of this market, a year ago, we were coming out of a very hot market, especially for refinances, where you could dip your toe in the water and get refis right now. And now, starting a company in a much more competitive purchase market, a contracting market in many ways. What ways do you see that competition kind of manifesting itself?
So it's funny. Everyone asks the same question of
Mhm.
me in a very, different way. Why would you go do this now when you knew the market was going to
Yeah.
was going to change? Wouldn't you want to be somewhere stable? And I say to everybody, this market volatility, in my mind, is the
Yeah.
perfect time to do it, because
Mhm.
you get a couple of advantages if you look at it the right way. Listen, interest rates are going up. We know,
Mhm.
we've seen it over the last couple of days, and
Right.
the Fed already made the announcement that they expect rates to rise again in March.
Mhm.
So if I priced out a loan yesterday on some of the websites out there, I was already seeing rates in the low to mid fours,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking by March, April, we're going to see those rates go up another however much they're going to go up. Maybe it'll be in the mid fours to high fours.
Right.
We don't know, but that's a perfect time because those refis that you used to be able to get by dipping your toe in the water and there was 10 deals for you, they're dried up, right? They're already dried up. It's not drying up, they're dried up.
Yeah.
And so, I see market consolidation as an opportunity for not only myself to go out there and say, hey, Mr. MLO, let me teach you how to grow your purchase business. Let me teach you of all the places I know of to get business that has to happen rather than business that wants to happen. And this way you can still maintain, your income levels, you can maintain a book of business. So I see opportunity there for MLOs, and I see opportunities there for companies like mine to actually take advantage of market consolidation and companies eating other companies, or just companies that may have to fold or shutter because they built their business on refis.
And I mean, you're seeing LO and overall staff layoffs every other day. So in some ways, it's probably a much more friendly hiring environment for loan officers than it was a year ago.
Absolutely. I recently hired a service to get me in front of a few LOs to interview. And the first couple of weeks, I was not seeing traction. And then about 2 weeks ago, I got flooded. And I can't keep up with the interviews. People are very excited about my comp program. People are very excited about a new space to be in. And since we focus on the non-QM space, people are excited to be able to do those kinds of loans where the conventional rates, maybe pushing them out of the easy market that they had.
Right. So you're not necessarily competing on price in much the same way that you would in a QM loan.
Right. So, and to put that in perspective, even though 85% of my business last year was conventional conforming, my business partner and I, we have a really hefty background in the non-QM spaces. So when I started my career, it was in non-QM, and that was the first 8 years of my life. So, we know this space really well. We know those products really well. And as an added thought just came to my mind, I've already seen about 10 to 15 deals that are fallouts from other lenders who've called me and said, hey, Roy, I can't do this. Is there any way you can help?
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I think that's the important thing for any business is really carving out that niche too. And one of the things that I know you publish and put out a lot on social media is kind of partnerships with realtors and helping realtors. Right. So what does that look like? How do you help your loan officers get those realtor partnerships and have that be a fruitful relationship?
So I'm a firm believer in connections. You've got to have them. So how do we help those realtors? First of all, we get out there and we do the teaching so that they can understand what products are available to them, what we can offer clients that they may have in their book of business who they may think are not ready to purchase, but we can get them to a space where they're ready to purchase. Right. And a lot of times people look at that and they say, Roy, aren't you just doing the same thing that we were doing back in 2006, and isn't that going to blow up? Well, with all the rules that came into place over the last decade, it's not as easy to do the way it was back in 2005, 2006. And on top of that, being able to refer back to my realtors on a regular basis so that they can take on new clients, that's another big thing. Like I send people to realtors, even if that borrower is an 800 score borrower and they're not going to do their loan through me. They can go right to their bank, or maybe they're a high net worth person doing business with their private client banking. Right. And so I know I'm not going to get that deal, but I also know that realtor is going to remember me because I've experienced that the real estate market and realtors in general, they've got 100 people like me that call them and that try to get into their mix and into their rotation. So you've really got to provide something of value. So what do I tell my LOs is to make sure that they're able to teach and coach the realtors and provide an actual place and home of value to them, somewhere they can go to answer questions and to be able to really relay with their customers. I also tell them, do it for free. If your realtor needs something from you, just do it for free. Honestly, one day it'll come back to you and that'll be fine. I learned something really, really, I want to say that stuck with me over the
Mhm.
last couple of years. And it was from my old boss. And she said it to me once. She said, Roy, you want to get a little bit from a lot. And that's actually the basis of what I do here, right?
Yeah,
I have a lot of MLOs and I'm taking a little bit and they're getting a lot of it, but there's a lot of them. So my little bit
yeah,
counts for something when there's a lot of them.
right. You want a small piece of a really big pie.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mhm. So we first started working together when you were on the technology side for your old company. So I'd be remiss not to talk to you about technology, especially now as a smaller lender trying to compete with bigger folks out there. And your tech stack, I'm sure, looks a lot different than it did, a year or 2 years ago. How are you approaching that? What has surprised you about, looking at the technology out there, particularly helping those smaller lenders compete with, the Rocket Mortgages of the world?
Sure. So actually, that's something that we've had to really, really dive into over the last year. Listen,
Mhm.
there's so many services out there. You just got to take the time to look. I tell people that are my peers all the time, take the calls. If a salesperson's calling you, just take the call. It's going
Yeah.
to be 5 or 10 minutes. And listen, you're not getting 100 of them a day. You might be getting five. And if you've got 10 minutes for five people, that's 50 minutes out of your whole day. You can listen. Maybe one of those things is going to be something that you want to talk
Mhm.
about more. But that being said, I have found point of sale systems that I've never heard of before that
Mhm.
I feel are amazing and better
Yeah.
than the ones that I was using before. I have
Mhm.
found an LOS that is not the industry norm LOS, and
Mhm.
I find it to be that much easier to use.
Mhm.
As you know, because we're vendor partners with
Yep.
you. Um, you know, I was able to do all the API connection work, and that I did that
Yeah.
myself.
Mhm.
And again, coming from a big corporate environment, I never had to think about that. So now I push the buttons and put it together and make sure it works,
Mhm.
test it, and then release it to the team and then teach them how to use it. But so you've got all these different smaller
Mhm.
companies with great product. You just
Mhm.
really have to get in front of them and be able to see what they're able to offer. So yeah, the POS, there's so many of them out there. The LOS, there's so many of them out there that are
Mhm.
great. We're not using anybody on the closing side yet because we're a correspondent lender. We
Right.
really just get up to the underwriting part, and then we kind of hand it
Mhm.
off. And our correspondent partner takes care of the rest of the
Mhm.
world. But um, you know, services like Lodestar. Lodestar is an
Mhm.
amazing service. People sometimes, they I would say 5 years ago they were going for a big name and they didn't know you yet, and now you're just as big a name as everybody
Yeah.
else out there, and that's great. There are other companies, tax return review, and being able to turn that information around quickly. Bank statements, um, paycheck stubs, whatever it is, there's some way to be able to speed through that using different OCR technologies,
Mhm.
different calculation methods that are proprietary to these companies. So from a tech stack perspective, I have really utilized some new players, and
Mhm.
I've been able to reap the benefit of utilizing those new players. And the best part about getting in with new players at the beginning is that I'll sign a multi-year contract
Yeah.
that may lock me into their their price when they're an unknown versus
Yep.
when they get to be the big guy. I'm going to be paying an arm and a leg to keep
Yeah.
them.
Well, they always say you don't get fired for hiring IBM, right? The big blue guarantee. You kind of went the opposite route. So when you're looking at some of these newer companies in a different technology to incorporate into your tech stack, what are the kind of your checklist? What are the things you go through when evaluating if it's going to work or not?
So I can tell you, when you're at a big company, it's
Mhm.
really about checking the boxes, making sure they fit everything. For me, it's a lot
Mhm.
different. I called you. You know why? Because
Mhm.
I know your service level
Yeah.
is impeccably amazing.
Mhm.
I called my credit provider, who provides me services through Meridian Link, which is
Yeah.
almost what every credit provider uses. But
Mhm.
I chose them because the service level was there. So being
Yeah.
at a small company like mine, it's really important that I can pick up the phone and get in touch with the right person. I don't have the time, the capability, or the want to take on the expense of sitting on hold, putting in an email request.
Yeah.
One of the best things about my LOS is that the ticket service is right inside the loan. If something's wrong, I type it in there and it's almost like a chat. They fix it right through the chat and they walk me through it. They can screenshot me as I'm stuck. They can see the errors. They're one of the better LOSs I've ever worked with. You know, and I'll say their name, Lending Pad.
Yeah.
But
Now we've had Lending
great.
Pad on the podcast before. They're a partner of ours. Yeah, they're great. I think they're filling a big need in the market for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely amazing. And I love the way they have it set up.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think, you know, you spoke a little bit to the interconnectivity of all of these pieces and how easy that is for you. And I think that's always a big concern with, you know, getting attracted by the shiny new ball. You know, a new technology is great, but if it doesn't play with everything else, what good is it?
Right. You're absolutely right. That's actually one of the biggest things you have to worry about when you're looking at these players. You've got to say, hey, is that going to disrupt my current workflow? My LOs love the tech stack we put together. And that's another thing we do is we let the LOs see and touch and feel what the next big thing that we're going to add to the tech stack is before we do it. And then we take their feedback. So it's not just me and my business partner sitting here and saying, hey, we think this will work. It's, hey guys, try this out. See if it makes sense to you. Tell me what's wrong with it. I really want your opinion. And then let's make a decision.
No, I think that's the way to do it. Because I always say we're not going to figure out the answer when I'm dealing with myself, my business partner, even our directors, right? You need to talk to the clients, you need to talk to the users.
Right.
So last question I had kind of along that vein. I know you had mentioned, I think just a few weeks ago, you had your return to social media for 2022, right? Is the way you've utilized social media changed now with the move? You know, how do you view that for yourself, for your loan officers going forward?
I got to tell you, social media is such an imperative part of doing business now. And for those people that aren't using it and using it to their best advantage, I implore you to figure out how to do that. But I give you a great example. I have a loan officer and he has a little TikTok channel that he puts out and it's called Mortgage Mondays, hosted by Mortgage Loan Joe. And he does a lot of funny little TikToks. And, you know, it's still within all the regulatory requirements. He doesn't do any rates. He doesn't do anything like that. But he makes funny TikToks. I got to tell you, he's been doing TikToks now once a week for about 4 months. And he has already done his third or fourth purchase deal that came right out of his TikTok comments.
Wow.
So amazing job. The social media aspect is important. And as leaders, you have to have a presence. Right. My first post this year, and I took some time off from everything to get everything settled here, ready for my first full year. And one of the really cool things that I did was I found myself something other than work to do, but I found a way to incorporate that. So in my next social media post, Jim, you're going to see I did a custom pair of Nike Air Force Ones. And I made a little time-lapse video out of it. Nice. I cut the air off the bottom and I wrote MOR in there. And then I painted the sneaker so it's, you know, it has the orange swoosh on it. That's my company colors. But I did it all by hand and by myself. And then I made the video out of it, put it on my YouTube channel, and I'm going to actually post it to LinkedIn and a few other places. So as leaders, you've got to be able to show, you know how to use it. You know you're out there. People want to see that. I get more hits on social media for, hey, Roy, what do you do? Hey, Roy, I saw your post and I really thought it was interesting. And that garners a lot of new followers. Plus, it has gotten me a handful of interviews, which has been great.
Yeah, I think you touched on the point at the end there with the interviews. That's been the biggest for me, both a year into the podcast now, you know, personally posting on LinkedIn and doing things like that. We don't necessarily get clients from it in the same way, but the number of times it's come up in an interview of someone saying, you know, I like what you're doing. I want to work for a company like this, or I listened to your podcast. I'm glad you're a real person. I feel like I know you now going into this interview. And also you can just see it's a screening way. Like you have so much out there about yourself that if someone's interviewing you and they haven't done that 20 minutes of homework to hear anything you put out, you kind of have your answer there as well. So I think it's a really good recruiting method is what I've found.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I agree with you 100%. You got to spend
Mhm.
a couple of minutes, figure out who you're talking to, and then be able to go into that conversation
Yeah.
confidently and
Mhm.
and knowing that you have that information, you can
Yeah.
use it.
I find like it's important though, to your point, to do it authentically. Like you have to, one of the things I've done is we moved into a new office this spring. And I finally have an office that I can decorate. So I put all sorts of things up, and just sharing those little office things. I get way more views than anything else I do that's a little more work related, or sharing our content or anything like that. Just
No,
showing my Star Wars picture that I have hanging in my office is going to get more attention than anything else. And it's authentic. I like having that stuff up. I like, it's a lot about me.
you're absolutely right. One of your posts, and I don't remember what platform I saw this on, probably LinkedIn, but I think it was of your family, and you have other entrepreneurs before you, and you had the pictures on the wall. So I thought that was really cool, and it was interesting. I zoomed in on the pictures, trying to say, hey, what did they do? And I thought that was really cool. And yeah, it made me more interested in reading and looking at it, and just giving you the view that you need, that gets you the traction, and gets you the algorithm that gets you more views.
Well, there's that, and then it's also just like sharing something that matters to you, right? Opposed to just trying to retweet stuff, or trying to get that original kind of sales pitch.
The authenticity is
Yeah.
absolutely
Mhm.
important. You've got to be true to who you are.
Yeah.
And then everything else will fall in line, as far as your company, your work, your associates, your colleagues. But that authenticity is so important. I can't tell you how much you hit that on the head. Absolutely, 100%.
Well, I think from a perspective of posting and being consistent with it, if you don't find something you enjoy doing and have something that's authentic and something that doesn't feel like work, like I'm sure you making your own Air Jordans does not feel like work, right? But you're able to use that for that. So I think the way you can transfer any sort of fun thing to what you can do professionally and showing a little bit about yourself is great. And I think that's the key, right? Because if it feels like a task or a box to check, you're going to give up eventually.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, listen, when I wanted to do the custom Air Force Ones, I wasn't because I wanted to do custom Air Force Ones. I always watch those videos online, and I'm always like, wow, that's so cool. What a great design. I'm not that guy, but I thought to myself, let me give it a shot, because I always wanted to try it. And that's when I thought, and let me incorporate it into work. So I gave myself a shot to try to custom make a pair of sneakers, and I was also able to incorporate that into work. So when I do put it up, #MOR, #mortgage, whatever it is,
Is that going to be the sales prize for the best performing LO this year, right? They get their own Roy George made Air Force Ones.
Yeah, maybe that'll be right. Hey, listen, I showed some pictures to the guys here and the girls here, and there's one woman who works here, and she has an unbelievable collection of sneakers. And so, yes, I think, that might actually be a thing for my team.
Excellent. I can't wait to see the picture. Do you find though, when new loan officers start, or maybe someone who's more seasoned in the industry, they struggle with kind of getting in that app posting or how to do that? Like, how are you kind of trying to help a loan officer do that who may not be super comfortable?
So that's where I was talking about leadership and having those posts out there.
Mhm.
As leaders and people at, leadership level roles, maybe you can't do the fun mortgage loan Joe type of thing. Maybe you have to make yours a little bit more professional, because maybe your audience is a slightly different. But I show them what I do. I give them ideas on what they can do. I tell them to try it once. Or a lot of the times for the people here, I ask Mortgage Loan Joe to go ahead and show them or help them or bring them on to one of his posts. And that way they get an idea of how he's doing it, and it helps them along to get theirs rolling. So I have another one of my MLOs, and she has a TikTok page or an Instagram page called Own More with Bianca. And, these are great little tools that they have to show open houses, to show, what they're doing, or maybe just to repost the news today. FHA may be considering a cut to mortgage insurance premiums, and post that in a fun way.
Yeah. No, I think that's great in finding the medium that makes sense for them, whether it be TikTok or written word or, videos or audio. So it's just, there's a lot out there. You just have to figure out how to use it.
Absolutely. You've got to be able to leverage what's out there. And, social media is one of the biggest things you can leverage right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, always a pleasure to have you on. It's always a very fast half hour when we're chatting. Is there anything else you kind of want to promote, plug, mention?
No, hashtag MOR, MOR Lending, and, morlending.com. That's us. And we're here, and, we're here to help. And if you've got your loan out there and it's not working wherever you are, or if you're a loan officer somewhere and you need help with a deal that you might lose, hey, give us a call.
Awesome. Well, Roy, thanks so much for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to see you guys as well. Jim, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, same here. Have a good one.